When we think of Genghis Khan, we often picture the fierce horseman who built the largest contiguous empire in history, stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea. He is remembered as both a brilliant strategist and a merciless conqueror. But behind the image of the empire builder lies a darker story, one of massacres, inventive punishments, and total annihilation of entire peoples. Below is a ranking of some of Genghis Khan's most notorious acts of cruelty, beginning with shocking brutality and escalating to acts that defy belief. Number 8. Killing his half-brother over a fish. Before he was the Great Khan, little Temujin, his birth name, had to fend for himself. At the age of 9, his father was poisoned by rivals, and his family was abandoned on the unforgiving Mongolian steppe. Survival became their only focus. By 14, Temujin had already taken on the role of provider, fishing and hunting for his starving family. One day, after a hard day's fishing, his half-brother Bektar snatched an entire fish Temujin had caught and ate it by himself. For most families, that would spark a heated argument. For Temujin, it sparked a fatal solution. He shot Bektar in the back with an arrow, killing him. While shocking, this was more than an outburst of rage. It was also a power move. Bektar was favored by Temujin's mother, and eliminating him asserted Temujin as the family's dominant figure. It was the first glimpse of the cold decisiveness that would later define his empire. Number 7. Murdering witnesses to his own death. Even in death, Genghis Khan ensured that blood was spilled. In 1227, at the age of 65, the Khan lay on his deathbed. He gave one last command. His burial site must remain secret forever. To guarantee this, his funeral procession was ordered to kill anyone who saw them as they carried his body into the wilderness. According to legend, once his men buried him, perhaps even diverting a river to hide the grave, those same soldiers were then executed by others to erase all witnesses. In some versions, they even killed themselves afterward. Either way, everyone connected to his burial soon joined him in death. Thus, Genghis Khan managed to add to his body count posthumously, making his grave one of history's most enduring mysteries. Number 6. Torturing a governor with molten silver. Diplomacy with Genghis Khan could be a deadly gamble. In 1218, he sent a trade caravan to the Khwarezmian Empire, hoping to establish peaceful relations. Instead, the governor of Otrar, Inalchuk, accused the caravan of spying and had all 450 men executed. When another group of Mongol envoys was killed soon after, Genghis's patience snapped. What followed was vengeance on a massive scale. The Mongols obliterated the Khwarezmian Empire, killing perhaps 10 million people. But Genghis reserved a special punishment for Inalchuk himself. After capturing him, the governor was executed by having molten silver poured onto his eyes, ears, and possibly his entire face. It was not just punishment, it was poetic justice. The man who had coveted Mongol wealth died by drowning in liquid treasure. Number 5. Using civilians as human shields. When the Mongols first attempted to invade northern China in 1211, they ran into a problem: cities with enormous fortified walls. Without advanced siege techniques, storming such defenses cost Mongol lives. Genghis Khan's solution was as ingenious as it was horrifying: human shields. The Mongols rounded up civilians and prisoners of war from surrounding villages and forced them to march in front of the army. These captives absorbed enemy arrows, triggered traps, and even carried siege equipment toward the city gates while defenders rained down boiling oil and fire. This tactic, called karash, or living boards, wasn't just limited to enemy soldiers. Women and children were driven to the front lines as well, ensuring defenders were tormented by the sight of killing innocents who looked like their own families. The cruelty worked. The Mongols reduced their casualties while psychologically shattering their opponents. And once Genghis adopted this method, it became one of his trademarks. Number 4. Starving out and destroying Zhongdu, Beijing. By 1214, the Mongols had gained enough siege expertise to threaten the Jin dynasty's capital, Zhongdu, modern-day Beijing. When Genghis demanded tribute, the Jin emperor agreed and surrendered riches to buy peace. But soon after, the emperor fled to a new capital in Kaifeng, betraying the agreement. Enraged, Genghis returned in 1215 and besieged Zhongdu. His army trampled crops and cut off supplies, forcing starvation within the walls. A desperate rescue mission from Kaifeng failed, with Mongols intercepting it and devouring the food inside of the starving citizens. Conditions worsened until cannibalism reportedly broke out. When the Mongols finally breached the walls, they unleashed their fury, slaughtering tens of thousands and enslaving skilled workers. It's said that 60,000 women took their own lives rather than face capture. The once great capital burned, abandoned only when the stench of death grew unbearable. Number 3. Massacre at Merv. If there's one city that epitomizes Genghis Khan's thirst for vengeance, it's Merv, a wealthy metropolis in the Khwarezmian Empire. By 1221, word of Mongol brutality had spread, and Merv's citizens hoped surrender might save them. They opened their gates without resistance, believing their lives would be spared. They were wrong. Genghis had no intention of mercy. His forces, led by his son Tolui, herded the population, estimated between 500,000 and 1 million people, into the plains outside the city. Divided into groups, nearly all were executed. Only a handful of artisans and women were spared for slavery. The city itself was set ablaze, its irrigation systems destroyed to prevent resettlement. Once a jewel of Central Asia, Merv was reduced to dust. Number 2. Piles of skulls at Nishapur. Another massacre followed at Nishapur, also in the Khwarezmian domain. After initially surrendering, the city rebelled again. In the ensuing battle, Genghis Khan's son-in-law Tokchar was killed by an arrow fired from the city walls. When word reached Genghis and his daughter, vengeance was demanded. His son Tolui led the retaliation. Once the city fell, every living being, men, women, children, even animals, was rounded up. They were all executed, their skulls arranged into towering pyramids, one pile for men, another for women and children. Chroniclers claim that the blood flowed so thick through the streets that the city was uninhabitable for years. Though Nishapur was eventually rebuilt, its people carried the memory of that horror for generations. Number 1. Attempted eradication of the Tangut people. The worst of Genghis Khan's atrocities came at the very end of his life. The Tangut people of the Western Xia Kingdom, located in modern northwestern China, had long resisted Mongol dominance. In 1226, despite Genghis's failing health, he led a final campaign against them. The Tangut king attempted to surrender too late. By then, the Khan's orders were clear: complete extermination. Mongol troops leveled Tangut cities, burned their records, destroyed their architecture, and scattered survivors across the empire. Their written language and culture virtually disappeared. So thorough was this campaign that historians like John Mudd consider it one of the earliest recorded genocides. To this day, the Tangut civilization survives only in fragments, erased at the whim of a dying conqueror. The legacy of terror. The empire of Genghis Khan is often praised for its innovations in governance, trade, and communication. But this legacy was built on rivers of blood, from massacres of hundreds of thousands to psychological warfare that broke civilizations. The Mongols under Genghis demonstrated cruelty at a scale rarely matched in history. Whether he killed his brother for a fish, executed men with molten silver, or wiped an entire people from memory, Genghis Khan embodied the brutal logic of conquest: terror as a weapon. And while his empire reshaped the medieval world, it did so at unimaginable human cost. In the end, the horrors he unleashed still echo centuries later, cementing him not only as one of history's greatest conquerors, but also as one of its darkest figures. And that wraps up our deep dive into the darkest and most brutal acts of Genghis Khan. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more wild stories from history, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.